Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Christina McNeil, and this is NB12 for Tuesday, September 11th, 2012, broadcasting from the Cable 12 studios on Robinson Road. In news tonight, the Prime Minister responds to concerns over oil drilling and the prospect of a referendum on the issue. The opposition leader encouraging government to govern rather than hold referendums on crucial issues, marking the 11th anniversary of September 11th, 2001, and the Minister of Agriculture discusses the fate of Arawak key vendors with outstanding lease payments. We have those stories and much more coming up tonight. Your NB12 starts right now. Thanks for joining us. Though there's no guarantee oil drilling will even be allowed following a referendum on the issue planned for next year, the Prime Minister says all the necessary environmental regulations and safeguards will still be put in place prior to the public deciding the issue. Charisma Robinson reports.
Prime Minister Christie says the government will produce regulations or new legislation on oil drilling and environmental safeguards ahead of the proposed oil referendum. He says with oil drilling and possibly the finding of oil in the Bahamas, there's no doubt that a new regime in the governance of such an industry is necessary. His comments come days after his government wrote to Bahamas Petroleum Company outlining the compliance status for its 5 licenses.
I remember many years ago when I looked at the agreement, I added an environmental clause to the agreement. Prior to that, there was not such a clause providing an obligation to exercise care. The former government made a requirement of an environmental impact assessment study. That has been put, and I think studies have been done and are being done in pursuance of that new requirement.
Christie says new legislation would also ensure that oil profits are shared. Yesterday, Minnis said that it is important that the proceeds from oil drilling in the Bahamas belong to the people and not to the government. The Prime Minister says the best interests of Bahamians will be protected.
I think if people of the Bahamas are going to be satisfied that their best interests are protected, there would have to be that regime put in place prior to a referendum. I mean, you could go to a referendum with the promise that afterwards, if you do it, we in fact will do it. But I think a part of the process of preparing the Bahamian people will be to put in place what it would look like.
During the election campaign, Christie was heavily criticized for acting once as an oil consultant for BPC. Now he's dismissing claims made by the opposition that he may have not given back those consultancy fees.
So you never financially benefited from anything?
No, listen, I'm a lawyer. In opposition, I'm a lawyer. Dr. Minnis is a surgeon. Dr. Nottage is a surgeon, for example, people in public life. When we are not sort of in government, we are free to do those things. And so we have to live. The fact of the matter is that I performed consultancy services in a very limited way for the Davis Law Firm because I am a senior person who has a view of public life. I'm able to give advice to persons like who are clients of the Davis Law Firm. And the way I do it, I don't go to the office. I don't be sitting in an office in the law firm. When I'm required to provide advice, I give the best possible advice.
Christie cautioned Minnis to be careful when he passes judgment on people's integrity. Reporting for NB12, I'm Charisma Robinson.
Well, the Prime Minister also told reporters today that former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram did the right thing when he returned just over $100,000 in constituency funds to the public treasury of the Bahamas. The former Prime Minister said he never spent the money, which he said has accumulated since 1998, on rent because he owned the premises where his constituency office was located.
It's a question of whether or not he ought to have used it in his constituency at the time. He didn't. There are some people who accumulate all sorts of travel vouchers and whatnot from the government and they don't use, and sometimes they return it. In his case, I think Mr. Ingram is giving an accounting for his time in public office, and that's the proper thing to do. And
Meanwhile, opposition leader Dr. Hubert Minnis is claiming victimization in his post as leader of the opposition. Dr. Minnis says by this time he should have been assigned an office as well as a vehicle. To date, he says he's been assigned a personal assistant and a driver. However, the personal assistant has not been paid for the past 2 months she's been working, and his driver does not have a vehicle to drive.
Even me, as leader of the opposition, I'm being victimized and discriminated against. Constitutionally, there are certain things that comes with the office. I, as yet, do not have an office. I'm still practicing for an FNM office, Mackey Street. Constitutionally, I'm supposed to be provided with personal assistance, driver, etc. I just got a driver recently, but I don't have a car. So the driver has to use my car. What happened if I didn't have a car? What am I supposed to use, my bicycle?
When Prime Minister Perry Christie served as leader of the opposition, he was given an office in the Bay Parle building on Parliament Street. Dr. Minnis says he hopes he will be assigned an office before the next general election.
Every time I see him, he'll remind me, you get in the office. The last time I spoke to the Prime Minister, I said to him, I hope I get my office before 2017. He works very slow, but I hope 2017 I'll have it. Before 2017, I'll have an office.
Arawak key vendors will now have until the end of the month to set up payment plans to pay off their delinquent lease fees. Agriculture Minister V. Alfred Gray says the extension was granted because those business owners have been responding favorably to the government's request that they bring their accounts current ever since he threatened to shut them down several weeks ago. At the time, many vendors were refusing to pay up.
Vendors' obligations are just like each of ours. We have to license our cars to get on the road. They must at least pay their leases to stay in the places provided for them. And some of them owe more than $40,000. And if they cannot see the wisdom in paying $200 on the arrears per month while they keep their rent or leases current, I think they are blinded, and I will probably not be able to help them. So having extended the time to the end of the month, I will then review and take whatever action we deem necessary, because the government is in full support of my effort. And I have dozens of people lined up for those stalls that might become available.
President of the Arawak Key Vendors Association, Bruno Minnis, has called for a meeting with the minister, who he believes should be more concerned about the long history of bad practices that occur at the site. Gray says he has no problem with that.
Let me say that I have met with them. If they invite me to meet with them again, I will do so. I am not going to call a meeting with them again, because the meeting I held 2 or 3 weeks ago, in my view, was sufficient. But if they think there are some things they don't understand, and or they will want further clarification on, it's my duty to meet with them. I do not believe that I know fully of what they are talking about now. The last thing I heard about, they wanted the government to improve the general ambiance of fish fry, and it's an ongoing exercise. The truth is that if you clean it today, it gets dirty today. That's the truth, because the vendors themselves have to participate in keeping it clean. And it's not really just simply the government's efforts. And so I encourage vendors to clean around their area.